Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. In today's video, we're going to briefly analyze the key tactical themes in Arsenal's narrow 1-0 victory over Norwich City. So in today's video, first we're going to focus on how both sides look to press without the ball, and then we'll shift to how Arsenal were able to unlock Norwich when they dropped off into a 4-5-1. So when we break it all down and we do look at the board, we have Arsenal starting in a 4-2-3-1 and Norwich City in a 4-3-3 that dropped off into a 4-5-1 out of possession. In the early stages of this match, Arsenal's pressing was effective and it ensured that Norwich City couldn't build out of the back from deeper positions. What you ended up seeing was that Aubameyang would step to the center backs and Odegaard would push forward to close down the spare center back. That would leave Saka and Pepe with the fullbacks, but what you end up seeing in that midfield zone is 3v3. Normally what you should be seeing is that Aubameyang and Odegaard should be sitting between Rupp, and if one player did step out to a center back on the ball, the other would drop off towards the deepest lying Norwich City midfielder, and vice versa. If Odegaard was to step forward to close down a center back, then Aubameyang would be tasked to drop deeper. But Arsenal were looking to press with their front four, and what you ended up seeing was that Maitland-Niles would step forward to close down Rupp when he dropped off deeper into that midfield zone, and then you would see Lokonga stick to McLean, and Saka would shift narrow to close down Lees-Melu. If the press was shifted over to the opposite side, then Saka would close down Aarons, Maitland-Niles would stick towards Lees-Melu, Lokonga would be tasked with pushing towards Rupp, and Pepe would be tasked with shifting narrow to close down McLean. The only other alternative for Arsenal if they don't have the wider players tucking in to close down the spare man was to have a center back stepping towards the spare midfielder. This is an example of Arsenal's pressing with Pepe sticking to Brandon Williams, and you have Lokonga and Maitland-Niles pushing forward to McLean and Rupp, with Odegaard prepared to step forward to Hanley if the ball is played backwards. This is another example of Arsenal's pressure, with Odegaard now blocking off the passing lane into Hanley when the ball goes back to Krul, and you could see Maitland-Niles stepping forward into the path of Rupp, and that results in Krul giving away possession to Pepe. And then here you could see Pepe forcing Brandon Williams to play the ball back to Hanley as Odegaard blocks off the passing lane into Rupp while Maitland-Niles steps forward to close him down, and that's where you could see Saka dropping off into that midfield zone to close down Lees-Melu. However, what we ended up seeing was that Gabriel and White did a very good job of sticking towards Pukki, and he was often outnumbered in 1v2 situations. That press was successful for majority of that opening half, but when Arsenal were tasked to drop off deeper, they did have Aubameyang and Odegaard sitting in between Rupp, and then they would take turns closing him down when one would step to close down the center back. Here's an example of Aubameyang and Odegaard stepping towards the center backs, with Odegaard applying pressure towards Hanley tight, and that's where you could see Lokonga and Maitland-Niles pushing forward to Lees-Melu and Rupp. From a defensive aspect, the only real issue that Arsenal had was when they dropped off a bit deeper into those two banks of four. The lines in between the midfield and the defense were compact, but it was when they were dropping off and not closing down Lees-Melu or McLean dropping off deeper, specifically Lees-Melu. And what he was doing was that he was getting the ball in those deeper positions, and he was looking to pick out the runs of Aarons running beyond Saka, who was caught narrow, and Aarons was able to push forward to receive those diagonal balls, but whenever he did receive the ball in the final third, he was closed down by Tierney or Saka, and there was only one occasion where one of his deliveries led to a legitimate goal-scoring opportunity. Besides that, we ended up seeing Aubameyang and Odegaard stick near to Rupp. They allowed the center backs to get on the ball, and they dropped off into those two banks of four when they weren't pressing high to close down Norwich in their own third. Meanwhile, when we shift to Arsenal, first we'll assess their shape, and then we'll look to Norwich City's pressing. When you look at Arsenal in terms of how they were looking to build out of the back, it was similar to what we've seen from them throughout Mikel Arteta's reign. At times, it did look like a 3-2-5 because Tierney was given the task to push forward, but Tomiyasu was adopting a deeper, narrow position in an inside right position, and there was the rare occasion where he shifted laterally into that midfield zone. But for the most part, he was pushing forward. Pepe was hugging the touchline. There were times where we did see Tomiyasu making overlapping runs and underlapping runs to drag away the Norwich City left-sided attacking player. But for the most part, what we ended up seeing down the right-hand side was Pepe was hugging the touchline, and in the earlier stages, he was often caught in 1v2 situations and he struggled to have an impact. But for the most part of that game, he did struggle to get the better of Brandon Williams, and he often lost the 1v1s against the left back, or he was unable to get crosses in towards the final third, specifically the Norwich City penalty area. Here's an example of Pepe in a 1v2 against Norwich City's left-hand side, and while Pepe evades the first challenge, Brandon Williams does well to stick with Pepe, breaking into right half space, and he makes a vital tackle. With Tomiyasu in more of a deeper inside right position, as you could see, Tierney was pushing forward down the left. In that midfield zone, Lukonga was holding the center of the pitch, and at times we saw Maitland-Niles in between that Lees-Melu-Dowell gap, but for the most part he was dropping off in towards the half space to cover for Tierney, who was pushing forward. And the main issues that Arsenal were creating for Norwich City, because Tierney and Pepe weren't offering a threat, was in between Saka, Odegaard, and Aubameyang. With Saka dropping off deeper to pull out errands, that obviously creates the gap for Tierney to push forward because Dowell struggled to track his runs. But what we ended up seeing was that in that midfield area, with Saka dropping off, he wasn't only creating space for Tierney, he was dropping off into that gap between Lees-Melu and Rupp, and that's where you ended up seeing the midfield overload, with Odegaard dropping towards the Norwich City deep-lying midfielders left. So what you end up seeing is that there is a 2v1 in that zone, and that's where you ended up seeing Arsenal being able to penetrate that midfield area. The reason why they were able to do that was because in terms of the Norwich City press, McLean was stepping forward to help out Pukki, and it did look like more of a 4-4-2 when they were looking to close down. But that left Lukonga free, and he was able to drop in between the center backs to get on the ball. But what ended up happening as well was that Rupp couldn't step forward to close him down because you had Lees-Melu focused on Maitland-Niles, and that leaves Rupp in that central midfield zone with Saka dropping in and Odegaard dropping in. So if the front two weren't able to close down the pass, then you were able to get the ball to Saka or Odegaard, and the only real issue that Arsenal had here was that when those players got on the ball, Rupp was able to shift across to commit a foul, or when they were able to facilitate the ball out into the wider areas, Tierney nor Pepe were able to impact the game. And then here you could see Lukonga pushing forward when Arsenal are more of a 3-2-2-3, and it's Lukonga looking to play the ball into Saka, but Rupp is able to shift across because McLean drops off deeper to block off the passing lane into Odegaard. Ultimately, this is what Norwich City needed if they weren't going to apply pressure to the center backs. You have McLean dropping off deeper to close down Odegaard so Rupp could stay with Saka, and then you have Maitland-Niles being blocked out by Lees-Melu and Dowell. Then we can look to a time where Gabriel carries the ball towards the halfway line. You have Lukonga dropping into the half space to cover for Tierney, and once again you see that 2v1 near Rupp with Saka and Odegaard dropping to either side of him, and when Gabriel splits the Norwich midfield bank, he plays it into Saka, but Rupp shifts across and he instantly fouls him. If we look to an example, here you can see Lukonga picking up the ball freely in the halfway circle, and because Saka is dropping off errands into that midfield zone, Rupp is caught out of position and McLean is caught higher up the pitch because he was closing down White. That allows Lukonga to play the ball into Odegaard dropping into the halfway circle, and as he carries the ball forward, he slides it out into the path of Pepe when he gets to the final third, and this places Pepe in a 1v1 against Williams, and he guides the ball into right half space, but once again Williams does well to stick with him and force a corner. In many ways, Arsenal look like more of a 3-2-2-3, and the key player here in terms of Arsenal's best chances was Aubameyang, and it was simply his movement across the center backs and his runs in behind that got him into good positions, and that often was orchestrated by either Lukonga or Odegaard dropping deeper to get on the ball with no pressure being applied. And there was one time where Tierney was able to wrap the ball around Aarons, who was caught higher up the pitch, and Aubameyang was able to make a move across the center back to get himself in a position to threaten the Norwich City backline. Shortly after that, it's Odegaard dropping into the halfway circle to pick up the ball, and he locates the run of Aubameyang in between Hanley and Williams, and he clips the ball over the top, and it falls to Aubameyang, who takes a good first touch into the box, but Krul gets off his line quickly, and when Aubameyang finishes, the goalkeeper pushes it away. And then lastly, you could see Maitland-Niles free in the halfway circle ahead of the Norwich City midfield bank, and that's where you see Aubameyang making a run in between the left back and Aarons to break beyond the Norwich City backline. But when he clips that ball over the top, it forces Aarons to pull back Aubameyang and to concede a booking. Then there was a time where Lukonga picked up the ball freely in his own halfway circle, and he located the run of Aubameyang spinning across Hanley. but when he clipped that ball over the top for Aubameyang to break free on goal, Aubameyang slips, but the ball was slightly overhit. In terms of the second half, we didn't see much of a tactical progression from either side. Apart from Saka and Odegaard dropping off into deeper midfield positions ahead of the midfield bank or dragging out errands to get on the ball, there was no real tactical development from Arsenal. But when you look how Arsenal were able to create chances, majority of them stemmed from moments of individual brilliance or single man pressing, forcing Norwich City into mistakes in their own third, and then Arsenal were able to break but failed to have the final finish to increase their lead. You could see Nicolas Pepe with a single man press, forcing Krul to concede possession into the path of Saka, and Saka slides the ball across Aarons and Cantwell to Smith Rowe free in the final third, and that's where he could slide the ball out to Nicolas Pepe running off the center back, but he looks to cut across Brandon Williams, and from this position he's also denied by Krul. Then there was a time where Pepe was able to get a touch across Brandon Williams to run at the Norwich City center backs, and that's where he slides the ball across the center backs into the path of Aubameyang, breaking into left half space. But from this position, Aubameyang's low effort is saved by Krul. Ultimately, Arsenal's winner stems from Thomas Partey bypassing the Norwich City midfield bank to find Saka between the lines as Odegaard was in a deeper position in the halfway circle, and that results in Saka doing a very good job of breaking the challenge of Hanley, and then he ends up carrying the ball towards the penalty area to slide it across Williams into the path of Pepe, and it presents Pepe in a position where he could finally get a shot off across Brandon Williams, and that resulted in Aubameyang giving Arsenal the lead. Obviously, when you look at it, you have to say that Mikel Arteta did make some positive changes. He brought on Thomas Partey and moved Maitland-Niles to a right-back zone to bring on Smith Rowe. And now you had Smith Rowe joining Aubameyang in attack. Thomas Partey and Odegaard are much better passers in that midfield zone area. And in terms of ball progression, they are an upgrade to Maitland-Niles and Lokonga. But Arsenal didn't necessarily improve from a tactical perspective following the changes. And when you look to Norwich City, they did bring on Rashica and Cantwell, and you ended up seeing Cantwell dropping off ahead of the Arsenal midfield bank as they dropped off into two banks of four, and at times a 4-5-1 with Smith Rowe dropping into that central area, while Rashica did look to shift centrally to try and get on the ball to support Pukki, and they didn't start the game due to the fact that Daniel Farke was worried of support out in those wider areas with Tierney pushing forward and Pepe getting into 1v1s with Brandon Williams. So as you can see, while Arteta's men were far from perfect, improved finishing and decision making in the final third deprived Arsenal of a blowout result in what proved to be a comfortable performance.